And good morning, everybody. It is Sunday, July 7th, coming off a big news drop from last night. Demar Derozan is now a former Chicago Bull, traded in a three-team trade to the Sacramento Kings. The Chicago Bulls acquire Chris Duarte, two second-round picks, and some cash. And the San Antonio Spurs acquire Harrison Barnes in the trade. And I want to start, Adam, with your thoughts on DeMar as a Chicago Bull. Let's start with your thoughts on his tenure. Where does he rank as a member of the Chicago Bulls in terms of your time watching the Bulls? You can even say all-time rankings as well.
Thanks, Josh. Yeah, happy to be talking about the trade. Happy that they finally got a deal done. We kind of expected this to go down. Uh, Overall, DeRozan's tenure with the Bulls, in one word, would be bittersweet. He was a very fun player, a very good player, and ultimately, like the big scapegoat. I shouldn't say scapegoat, but like the problem with this era was Lonzo Ball. Like Lonzo Ball getting hurt really took that team that was briefly first place in the Eastern Conference year one. You know, the Bulls were must-watch TV, getting up and down the floor, really finding themselves a super fun identity. And DeRozan was absolutely cooking. You know, you took this like aging shooting guard, became a small forward, and then eventually listed as a power forward with the Spurs. The Bulls kind of see what they were doing over there in San Antonio, as far as like having this point forward DeMar DeRozan, and they're like, hey, this guy that would kind of be perfect for what we're building here, and he was a closer. He was just so dominant in the fourth quarters, got to his spots. That mid range was so silky smooth. Overall, I'm going back to my earliest days watching the Bulls were like the end of the dynasty. But for sake of this, I'm not going to talk about when I was 6, 7 years old and Grandpa Shalafu's basement, you know, watching the Bulls against the Jazz. But like, let's say from the year 2000 on, it goes like for me, Derrick Rose, uh, Joakim Noah, Jimmy Butler, and then I start to think about, well, I'm going Luol Deng, and then I'm going to Rosen. So there are some guys in front of them, but like those teams accomplished more. But also, it just goes to say, kind of how I started this answer, long-winded answer at that, is it could have been so much more, you know? And that's where things get frustrating because, like, the past 3 years have been dealing with injuries and then different players getting frustrated. And, like, this is the end. It felt like the end for sure the last few weeks as the Bulls look to kind of clearly go younger, but this is the end now, and it's just a matter of time before they really like go all in on the youth movement, and I'm happy about that. Uh, and so it's the end of an era with DeRozan, and it's ushering in the new era that is the youth movement. That's what the big picture is.
I agree with you. It's sad to see an era end. DeMar, I would say, in terms of scoring ability, one of the three best pure scorers that I've seen, for the Bulls. Jimmy, Derrick Rose, and DeMar DeRozan. That's the three that I saw that were truly the best scorers in the last 20, in my 20, even you could say 25 years of watching Bulls basketball. I don't remember 25 years ago, but you get my point.
I get your
Um,
point.
you know, it's it's sad, but the youth movement is here. The Bulls are tanking for 2025. And I think what is important here, also as a part of this trade, is the Chicago Bulls do not want to lose their first round pick. I think a lot of people need to understand, and this is something I'm actually kind of upset about, is I did not see any reporting that the Bulls try to up the protections or try and retain their draft pick that they got for from the draft pick they traded away to San Antonio in the DeMar DeRozan signing trade. I think something like that, is even more baffling because, to be honest, you know, you're seeing guys get signed and traded and they just get traded for second round picks. Why the Bulls decided to trade a protected first round pick for DeMar DeRozan is beyond me. It's just another example to me of just mismanaging a trade, because now you kind of got worst case scenario and weren't thinking just in case a worst case scenario. I'm not going to trade this first round pick, even if it's protected. And
Well, then they probably don't get him.
well, I think he was going to come here either way. I think he was, but regardless, that pick is top 10 protected next year. I think the Bulls will retain that pick. It will be interesting to see if they can retain it the next 2 years. It becomes top 8 protected after that. I think one of those 2 years, the Bulls will not be able to get that pick because I think they won't be a bottom 8 team in the league for 3 years in a row. I don't see that. And I don't think Jerry Reinsdorf wants that. So I don't think it's going to happen, but we will see. But like we said, the youth movement is here, and I think that they got back in this trade what they wanted back, which was nothing. They wanted to
Yeah.
take the team that they want, and that's
That's
okay.
perfectly said, Josh.
And,
Perfectly said.
and
They
I am
got what they, yeah.
and I am okay with them just taking on cash considerations, a second round pick, and a role player that's probably not going to see much playing time unless people are hurt. That is okay. That is totally okay.
Cash is probably what they need more than anything right now.
Yeah, I mean, I think Duarte is a very nice player, had a very good rookie season with the Indiana Pacers. He fell off he fell off his second season in his sophomore season, and then he really took a nosedive last year. He only averaged 4 points a game. So we'll see where he fits on the Bulls. I'm sure Stacey King's already coming up with a nickname for him, and it's going to be fantastic. So I'm excited to see what Stacey's got up his sleeve. But, at the end of the day, this was about just continuing the youth movement for the Chicago Bulls. And it is about the Bulls getting a high draft pick in 2025. And I think we can agree on this, Adam. I think we can agree that it is okay if, for the Chicago Bulls, who are not known for tanking, the Reinsdorfs don't like to tank. They like to make sure the stadium is full. They like to make the playoffs. That is their number one priority. And that is okay. But for one season, I think Jerry Reinsdorf is saying, you know what? We got to just nip it in the butt and move on. And it's better for the team in 2025 if we focus on getting a top 5 draft pick, hopefully top 3, and trying to better ourselves as a franchise.
Yeah, I mean it is it's a move that says win later. Would have loved to see the Bulls get even a protected first rounder, but it's okay. They didn't. Maybe you never know. Like a second round draft pick's a lottery pick. You could get your Nikola Jokic. Is it likely? No. But like every once in a while, like wasn't Jimmy Butler the last pick in the first round?
I'll give you one. Guess who was a second round pick who was averaging 17 points per game after the All-Star break for the Chicago Bulls? His name is Ayo Dosunmu. And I remember
Yeah.
when we drafted him, and I was smiling ear to ear because I knew this guy had potential to be a great player. We saw it in his rookie season, just how good Ayo is as a
How many
basketball
points
player.
did you say he's averaging after All-Star break?
He was averaging 17 points a game after the All-Star break this year.
Wow. Okay.
Ayo Dosunmu is a very good basketball player. Do not be surprised if he is in the conversation for sixth man of the year next year. It's very, very possible. In fact, I'll look up
That'd
his
be
stats.
great.
I think it's very possible that we're going to see him as one of the best sixth man in the NBA coming next year. But if I actually go back, you can even go back a little bit further to January 20th, and from January 20th on, he was averaging 16.6 points, 4.5 assists, 52% from the field, 43% from three, and 82% from the line. The man is efficient, and he is a fantastic defender. He is the Trae Young stopper, as we like to say. I remember very distinctly him just hounding Trae Young so many times on possessions, and Trae Young losing his cool. So it's just for me, the Bulls do have some very good talent on this team. Let's not sleep on it. It's not a team that I think is going to be a Washington Wizards or
No,
Detroit Pistons. I don't think this team is going to win 15 games. I honestly still think the Bulls are going to win 30 to 35 games. That's my guess.
I'd love to see in 3 years, Josh Giddey and Kobe White are all stars. Patrick Williams is a really damn good player, and Dasuma's a really damn good player.
If he's still
And
here,
yeah, who are you referring to?
I would assume because he's only on a 3-year contract. So if he's, hopefully he's still here in 3 years because his payday is coming.
Yeah, well, I hope he is. Um, but I guess what I'm getting at is I just hope that it is about developing that young core, the new core, because the old core is starting to. It's kind of like in the Iron Man movies where he's switching out his little arc
That's
reactor.
a very, very good comparison. And I think this is the thing I want to see. Are the Bulls going to develop that talent? How well can they develop that talent? Because listen, the Chicago Bulls are still one of the premier franchises in the league. Chicago is still one of the premier places to play in terms of all sports. You are beloved here if you sign here. DeMar got loved by everybody here. No one had a bad word to say about DeMar. He's one of the nicest guys in the league and was still one of the best players in the league and gave his all while he was playing here. And, I mean, if he had a bad game, he had a bad game, but, he never did anything to alienate anybody, nothing. And I think, you know, it just goes to show this is another opportunity for the Bulls to show, hey, we might be struggling a little bit, but we've got all these young guys that we are eventually know are going to show out and are going to prove to the league that we can be eventually in the next 3 years, say a top 5 seed in the Eastern Conference, get to the second round of the playoffs, maybe push a team to a 6th game and make some noise and then go from there. I think that
And
that's kind of where
yeah,
you see them.
and I want to see them, develop Montes Bazelis, the deal. Stock, but like right now, it's just good that all right, you got rid of the really old player that is gonna be frankly like just two different timelines. Like DeMar gets to go be on a competitive team out west. He's from California. Good for him. It's not necessarily a homecoming, but it's a hop, skip, and a jump from home for him. First time he's gotten to really play out in California. And for the Bulls, like they get to continue to go on with their rebuild. And I think it's just a matter of time now before Zach LaVine and Nikola Vucevic get moved. I think at the latest we're looking at February for that.
I think Zach LaVine will be easier to trade by February than Vucevic. As much as I want Vooch gone, I just maybe someone will pick him up. We'll see. I think
Vucevic is going to play his stock up.
I think Zach LaVine will too, because
Yeah.
this year is a free for all year, and I still don't understand why Zach LaVine is not getting traded for. It kind of still baffles me. I understand the contract, I understand, but listen, everyone's getting a contract. Do I think Franz Wagner is worth the contract he's getting? He's worth a nice chunk of change, but I don't think a guy shooting 29% from three deserves to get the kind of money that he's getting, like close to 50 million a year. I'm not so sure about that. So, or at least I think maybe even 45, something along those lines. But the point is, you know, it's just we're going to see what happens. It's going to be very interesting to see, what this team does. But I think we want to shift gears for a second here. Let's talk for a second about the team that just got DeMar DeRozan, the Sacramento Kings. Where do they rank now in the Western Conference? Because, we know the Western Conference. And I remember growing up, there was a year where you had the Golden State Warriors after they beat the Dallas Mavericks in the first round of the playoffs, as the 8th seed, won 48 games the next year and didn't even make the playoffs. We've seen years where a team with 50 wins in the Western Conference is the 8th seed. Is this the deepest the Western Conference has ever been?
I mean, it certainly seems like it's got to be up there, right?
I can't.
Um,
I mean, it's unbelievable. There might be 3 teams in the West I can think of that don't really have a chance to make the playoffs. And other than that, you could make an argument that any of these guys can make it.
and I assume you're talking about the Blazers, the Spurs, and the Jazz.
I would constitute those 3 teams, correct.
Yeah. Anyone else could make it. I mean, I'm just going to rattle off teams who are still better than the Kings. Thunder, and the Thunder got better this offseason.
I agree.
Nuggets stayed about where they are, still a legitimate title contender. Timberwolves, dare I say, got better. I think they just drafted super well.
I think they got better because they drafted so well. I agree.
Yeah. And Anthony Edwards is just going to keep getting better. Clippers. I think the Clippers got a little bit worse, and that's where it's like maybe the Kings are better than the Clippers. And I'm just reading down the standings. The Mavericks, they were the 5th seed going to the playoffs last year. They got a lot better. They got a lot better.
They upgraded
With
everywhere they needed to.
yeah. The Suns, I think they're going to be better just with better coaching with Mike Budenholzer. And so then you have like the Lakers and the Pelicans. And I know you feel pretty strongly that the Pelicans got a lot better. And so then that brings the Kings to like next thing you know, you're still kind of looking at that high end play in situation. But I think a best case scenario for a team like the Kings is the Kings are the 5th seed,
And
you
gets
know,
around.
but I
I
think
you're right.
realistically they're looking anywhere between 5 to 9. I think that DeRozan is nice, but I don't think he moves the needle all that much.
And what we're forgetting is, Adam, we're forgetting you love this team. The Houston Rockets are young and up and coming. We don't know what they're going to do. They could be better next year. Memphis now has John Morant back. We don't know how good they're going to
Yeah,
be. This
that's a
is,
good point.
and that's why I said there's really only 3 teams. And we'll get to that one of those 3 teams in just a moment, as they were part of this trade. But you know, I just think this is going to be such an interesting team. Now, I will say this Kings have, he's also one of my favorite players, Domantas Sabonis. He's one of my favorite
Yep.
players. You can make an argument he is, if not better than his father was, although we never got to see his father in his
In
prime.
his prime, yeah.
I mean, it would have been. I
No,
could say
Sabonis is a top 5 big in the league for me, and I pound the table for Sabonis every year. Like 14 rebounds a game, almost averaged a triple double last year. I think very complimentary piece to add DeMar DeRozan. Big thing for me is the Kings were 3rd in pace last year. DeRozan is a perfect fit for what he is at this point in his career. I think that when your forwards are Keegan Murray and DeMar DeRozan instead of Keegan Murray and Harrison Barnes, you just got so much quicker. You got so much more dangerous. I think that the Kings are going to be better than they were last year. The problem for the Kings is that other teams are better than they were last year too.
Yeah, and I think it's going to be very interesting to see, just how they stack up in the Western Conference. I really think it's going to be one of the toughest times for teams to get even improve their record, just because they're battling against teams that have improved as well. So it's going to be very interesting to see how they do this. And the question now becomes,
The defense.
the defense, that is very true, but also who does DeMar now take that second spot for Sabonis as the second option on this team? I do think so. I think you've got Malik Monk, who's a very nice complementary piece here. You also have, Keegan Murray, who's a great shooter, who's always been very helpful. And so, but I think having a guy like DeMar DeRozan just helps so much, especially in the fourth quarter, takes pressure off De'Aaron Fox to have to be that go-to option.
It's a
in,
really good point.
in the fourth quarter. And I just think, it's going to be a very interesting time for the Sacramento Kings. I really think that they have improved. You're getting a guy who averaged 24 points a game last year. Maybe I would estimate DeMar will average about 20 points. He'll take a few points. He'll take a little bit of a step back, but that's okay because we saw in San Antonio his numbers weren't fantastic, but in terms of his scoring, usually he's like in that 24, 25 point range. But what we see is that DeMar has so many other abilities. He can be a point forward and give you those assists. He's a very good playmaker. I saw him in San Antonio become their best playmaker. Pop taught him how to use his other skills and helped him develop those other skills and become such a finely tuned basketball player and more complete basketball player that he's going to be a perfect fit for this Sacramento Kings team because of his playmaking abilities. He's going to be able to, stay in the post. And if, Fox is cut to the rim, he'll find him. He'll be that guy who can cut to the basket or pull out. If he needs to shoot the corner three and Sabonis is in the post, Sabonis will find him for the open shot. Now, we know DeMar is not the best three-point shooter, but I can definitely say Demar DeRozan last year was shooting a lot more threes than he normally did, and he still shot at a pretty solid clip. He's not the best three-point shooter.
He was like a 34% shooter from three for the Bulls.
33 to 34, which is very reliable, unlike Vucevic.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, like it's a win-win trade, but in a weird way, you know what I mean? And it's like the thing is the Bulls aren't they'll reap the rewards down the road. Right now, it's kind of painful, man. Like, I gotta admit it's kind of painful because it's just like it's bittersweet. Like the Bulls do have to get worse before they can get better.
Right.
And so it's exciting to see that like the Bulls are trying to get better, but it's also like, all right, well, we're going to be a little worse right now. But even like, I feel like last year, especially after about December, like things started to get really ugly with the Bulls, and me and you would text about the Bulls all the time. And I just started saying, please don't run it back again next year.
I think that they realized that they couldn't. I think
Yeah.
I will say this, and I think you and I would agree. The reports are that the front office said push for the playoffs. I don't think AK wanted to push. I think he wanted to trade everybody and just clean house. I think he wanted to let younger guys get a bigger play, get a bigger opportunity. If he had it his way, Alex Caruso would have been traded. Andre Drummond would have been traded. Zach LaVine they might have tried. Vucevic may have been traded in February. But I'm actually not mad that they traded Caruso for Josh Giddey. I'm not necessarily as mad, because you would have gotten a first round pick, which would have been great, but you're getting a younger player who's already established that he can be a decent point guard. And, as long as his shooting improves, you never know what his ceiling is. So it'll be interesting to see. But at the same time, I just think they knew that it was over. And I give props to the Reinsdorfs. I will give them their props when they finally said, you know what, this didn't work. We need to go in a different direction. Now
I never thought I'd see the day you gave the Reinsdorfs props.
I will give them it for now because they know 2020. I think AK sat him down and said, look, 2025 is one of the more loaded draft classes you're going to see, especially at the top.
Yeah.
We can use one of these guys. We can use the help. It would be tremendous help if we get one of these guys.
And then when you get into a lottery, that's where things can get really exciting. If the Bulls can
look at Atlanta this year. Look at Atlanta.
Yeah, exactly. Like if the Bulls get even a top 3 pick next year, they are in great shape for the next 10 years when you look at like some of the young core they already have in case. I'm all in on Giddey. I think he's a really, really good point guard. Kobe White took tremendous steps forward. Dosunmu has been really, really good since after the All-Star break. I'm hoping that the two kind of X factors when I look at just the intermittent future here is I'm really hoping that Patrick Williams takes that big step forward this year now that he is finally going to be able to be Patrick Williams now that DeMar DeRozan is gone. We'll get to truly see what they have in him. And then Montas Buzelis, I hope, is a stud. And I'm hoping that he's the steal that I believe him to be. He was a guy I didn't really know much, especially because he didn't play college ball. I couldn't watch him in the NCAA tournament. But after doing my kind of research after the Bulls got him, I was like, damn, this guy's good. This guy's gonna be real nice. So I like the Bulls' young core. It's gonna be a fun young core. I'll tell you what, me and you both like to hop on the sticks, play a little bit of 2K. Well, this is gonna be a fun rebuild project for the Bulls because they have fun young players again.
And I think what people forget is that Matas Buzelis was the consensus number one prospect before, things changed and he was on the G League night. What really changed his draft stock? He wasn't shooting the three well. And can have a bad year shooting the three. That does not mean that, it's going to be during his senior season. In high school, he shot 42% from three. Then he goes to the G League and unfortunately he underperforms from three. But this is a guy who is very lengthy. He's a good defender. He averaged 2 blocks a game.
6'10" athlete, and he's a dog.
He is. And he's one thing is that he's going to play hard, especially for his hometown.
Yeah.
And we've seen already a hometown kid who is performing tremendously in Ayo Dosunmu, who is one of the best young guards that there is in the league in terms of a backup role, who's going to have a tremendous year, I think, next year, a tremendous opportunity, especially since he's developed his game so well. I think it's going to be very interesting to see just what this Bulls team can do. And honestly, I am okay as a Bulls fan with accepting that you're not going to make the playoffs. When I was watching this team, when they were rebuilding with, the Paul Zipsers, the Lauri Markkanens, the Chris Dunns, the Zach Levines, the worst contract in Bulls history, the Cristiano Felicios. Let's go. There's a bad contract right there. Still cannot believe they signed him to that contract. So
some names I never thought I'd hear again: Paul
there you
Zipser
go.
and Cristiano Felicio.
We're going to drop an AJ Guyton in there just for fun.
Oh, Indiana product, right? Yeah.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. But I think, I don't mind watching a team that I know is not going to make the playoffs if they're going to be running and gunning and there's going to be struggling on defense to stop somebody, but they're getting up shots and they're doing what they need to do to improve. If I see Patrick Williams averaging 14 points a game next
I'm
year,
thrilled.
I would be very happy.
Bring on the growing pains.
I'm okay with that for a couple of years. If Mutas Buzelis averages 12 points a game and 7 rebounds or something like that, I would be okay with that.
I'd love for him to win Rookie of the Year, doggone it. And I think he could. I feel like the rookie class isn't that good. I don't think it would be that far-fetched.
No, I don't think it's far-fetched to say that either. I think it's very possible that Mutas Buzelis, who was the number one consensus coming into the 2020 for NBA draft for quite a long time until the season kind of began. He was considered the top prospect. It'd be very interesting to see. He can win Rookie of the Year. It's a complete toss-up to see who is going to win Rookie of the Year right now. I mean, I don't think it's going to be the number one pick in the draft. I do not think the number one pick in the draft this year is going to win Rookie of the Year. Sometimes we see the number one pick be the clear and obvious number one pick, and they clearly win Rookie of the Year just because they're the number one pick. Like Victor Wembanyama, although Victor Wembanyama is just an alien, it's a completely different thing. But the point is that we don't know who's going to win. And Mutas Buzelis is just as good of a chance as Alexander Sarr and other names in this draft.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think at this point it's kind of like we're in what happens next mode. Like when are the Bulls going to be able to unload Zach LaVine? Are they going to be able to do that before the season starts?
I think we can both agree there is major concern that they are not going to be able to do that. And this is part of the reason I think that it is. I think teams around the league talk. I think GMs and they have good relationships with each other, etc. And I think that there's kind of a consensus around the league. The Bulls can be bullied a little bit. The Bulls can be pushed around, and we don't need to trade for someone like Zach LaVine if we don't want to, because we know we can, you know, the Bulls are going to ask for too much, or, you know, they can be bullied a little bit into getting a lower asking price than we want. So maybe when the time comes, the problem is the Bulls get bullied into getting a lower, you know, value for Zach LaVine than they could have when they really could have gotten him for something better. You know, so that's my main concern. I think there's kind of AK's been blacklisted a little bit, so to speak, in the league, in that, you know, it's like, you know, we're not going to deal with somebody who, you know,
I
we don't
don't think
want
he's been blacklisted. I feel like he just hasn't had any leverage.
you
Like
know,
the
that's a better
Bulls have
way to
been
say it. That's a
having
better
to
way to say it.
negotiate
Yes.
from a point of weakness. So I'm going to give him the benefit of the doubt. Like this dude has had his hands tied
For
for a
3 years.
long time.
And, you know, and I would say he was told to come in and make the Bulls a playoff team right away. Not the first year.
And he essentially did. Things obviously went sideways when Lonzo Ball's knee stopped working.
I mean, if Lonzo Ball doesn't get hurt, this is a very
This
solid.
is still a playoff team.
Yeah. Who probably make it to the second round of the playoffs that very first
That
year.
isn't moving on from DeRozan right now.
I agree. So, you know, I would agree we can give him the benefit of the doubt. It's just I want to see what he can do with, if you want to call it a rebuild, you want to call it a retool, whatever you want to call it. We need to see what his abilities are going into this. And it's going to be very interesting. It's going to be interesting to see how Billy Donovan handles it. It's going to be interesting to see how Zach LaVine handles it. Currently, Zach LaVine, to this day, folks, the worst winning percentage among all active NBA players. I believe his win percentage is like 37.8% as a NBA player. It's pretty tough if you're Zach LaVine to have to deal with losing again and again the way he has, you know. And I think we could both agree we understand Zach LaVine's frustration. You
Yeah.
know, and Zach LaVine has won 7.2% of the games in his career. That's pretty bad.
And I wonder if GMs who are looking to make a move, are they seeing Zach LaVine? Oh, this guy's not a winner.
I think if Zach LaVine is in the right spot, it doesn't matter. But he's
I agree. I feel like he's done things that impact winning. It's just the dude has kind of been dealt a pretty bad hand as far as career goes.
yeah, I
You
think
know, like he was on some really bad Timberwolves teams, and then he's rebuilding with the Bulls for a long time, went through some ugly years with that, and now it's like they're rebuilding again after 3 very middling years that were plagued with bad luck.
I agree with you. I still think LaVine is one of the better scorers in this league. You know, I mean, when he's on, he is on, and he can really, you know, do a lot of great things. And we saw in Chicago him to go from, you know, a guy who, you know, was one of the most, best dunkers in the league to this day, still the best dunk contest that I've ever seen, the 2016 dunk contest. And we've seen him become this elite scorer, you know, back-to-back all-star appearances. Did not make it the last 2 seasons, but he's still a young guy. He's gonna be 29 years old. He's still in his prime, and he's still a guy who can easily score 25 points a game and give you 25 a night when he
A
wants.
25, 5-5 guy. It's crazy that like no one wants him.
He had
I guess no
one
one
bad.
wants the
He's the worst.
contract, but like, are you kidding me? Like, if I'm the Los Angeles Lakers, and I don't know if this has been like tossed around, but like, if the Bulls wanted Rui and Vanderbilt, I know we talked about that. If I'm the Lakers, I'm like, yes, deal, done. Give us this 25, 5-5 guy. We're trying to win now, and you can have our backup power forward and our kind of tweener forward. Like, here's a couple young pieces. Give us Zach LaVine. I would be all over it, you know, but like they're not. I don't know what the deal is. Maybe I'm sure like the finances make it tricky. It's a hard contract to trade, but like if we're just talking basketball, Zach LaVine can absolutely ball. And You know what? I'm glad the Bulls. So the Bulls, we talked about they kind of didn't get much back for DeRozan, which is okay. I'm not okay with that for Levine. Levine is a guy like a lot of players, their best years like are age 29, 30, 31. Like this is a dude like in his prime who's a baller. Get get value. And if you don't, then don't trade him.
I think we're going to see his value increase because he had one bad year. This is the only bad year in terms of, I mean, he hasn't been the healthiest all the time. He's only played 70 games 3 times in his career. In the first 2 years of his career, he did that. And since then, he's only played over 70 games one time, that being 2022 to 2023 season. But before this, let me just give you his last 4 seasons combined. 25 and a half points, 4.7 rebounds, 4.5 assists, 48% from the field, 39% from three, 84% from the line. When you've got a guy like that who can do things like that, the fact that you won't trade for somebody like that just because they had one bad year kind of baffles me. But I think as we're close to wrapping up here, I just think, it's going to be interesting to see what the Bulls do for the next, for the next season, who is going to be here, who's not going to be here. And it's going to be fun to see the youth movement taking place.
Yeah.
And it's going to be, it'll be nice to just see, what these guys can do in their, roles. Kobe White's going to probably take more shots next year for sure. I'm excited to see what Josh Giddey can do. I'm excited to see P. Will take another step up because he's going to get more shots. And we've
I'm
seen
excited for the opportunity he's going to finally have.
absolutely. It's about the opportunities for these young guys on the team.
Yeah.
Now that DeMar's not there and, Levine, maybe he gets hurt again and gives them more opportunities. So we will see.
Yeah.
But that's going to wrap it up for us here. Another edition of Running with the Bulls. Adam, thank you for joining me. I always love talking Bulls with you.
Absolutely, my friend. And I appreciate you being willing to do. We didn't have one necessarily scheduled for today, and then the trade went down. We hopped on. That's what it's all about. So I appreciate you doing that with me. And yeah, man, I guess we'll just keep an ear to the ground. We'll see what we hear and see what moves come next.
All right. And that's going to wrap it up for us, everybody. Have a wonderful week.